Hey guys, and welcome to how to paint an Undying Warrior for Blight of Gods. Alright, so as of today, my Undying Warriors are live and available for purchase on my web store. The link is in the down there, and these STL files for 3D printing come with supported and unsupported files, and some instructions as well. So today we're going to be going through and doing the full color scheme on this one. We've got the dark reds on the cape, my color glazing into brass, some nice old bones, and some blacks, neutrals as well to support the colors. So it should be a really fun one to do, and I'm very excited to be sharing this with you today. This has been a long time coming, and this little guy, if you haven't noticed, is usually in the paint list at the beginning of every video, which is really fun. So I'm looking forward to painting him. There are a couple of others in this set which I'll show. If I'm really good, I'll put them up there so you can see them, and we'll show a nice image for him at the end and that sort of thing. But for now, I think we should get started and start painting him, eh? So to begin with, we're working on that base. And so we've got that Necromancer cloak, dungeon grey, uniform grey and white. And we're going to build this up in successive layers, dry brushing layers. And to begin with, we start with the base. So we're just painting on the Necromancer cloak, getting a nice coverage down on all those little sort of cracked tiles and areas on the base. And then we move into the dry brushing steps. And so you get an old sort of scuffy brush, something that you can ruin, and makeup brush, etc. And then we start to do that dry brushing. So you're putting the paint on the brush, rubbing it all off and onto a piece of paper or something like that, and then brushing across the surface, trying to go against the edges, and you get that nice highlighting that goes on. And so you just build that up through those different layers of grey up into white, and you're not washing out the brush in each step. So you're just allowing the paint to mix a little bit as you go, rubbing it off, etc. as you go up to white. So you get a nice good uniform sort of dry brush. And then once that's down, we move into the mud. And so with the mud, we've got some Rhinox hide there, some Doombull, some Bala Brown and some Ushabti, and same process again, painting on the Rhinox hide and then dry brushing up those other steps using a very small sort of scuffy old brush to work up those little highlights. It's a very small area on the base, so you don't need to spend too much time on that step. Maybe leaving the rocks, the larger ones, with the grey, but that's entirely up to you. And then finally, to give this base a little bit of life and a little bit of colour, we've got the sepia shade and the Biltan shade and some Lamia medium, and we're going to then use that in various mixes. You'll see me mixing it on the palette there and just dabbing it around the base to give it some staining and some life, some areas where there's sort of moldy sections and little dribbles and stains in between the paving stones, to give it some some age and really bring it out so it's not so neutral. So you've got some greens and browns going on that are a little different from the rest, and that should give you a really nice result. And now we're onto those metals, and this is a really fun stage of the process. So we've got that Runelord brass and the lead belcher, and you just go around and base coat the areas on the model that you want to have the metal. In this case, the armor is the Runelord brass, and I've got lead belcher for the weapon and a few other little details. Some of the little ringlets that hold the charms and little things that are hanging off the skeleton, you can do those as well. And so as we move through that process, you might do a second layer or third layer just to get a really nice even coat. And you mix a little bit of a drop of water with the paint, generally speaking, if it's a little bit thick, and just get that nice smooth even consistency down. We are going to be doing washes in various stages over this, so you don't want to have it too thin. You want to get a nice good rich metallic color down before we begin. So once that's all sorted, then we move into the sepia shade and then Nuln Oil wash. So we're using the Lamia medium again to mix in a couple of drops to keep it a little bit more diluted than it normally would be, and then you're building this up in two layers. So sepia first, then the Nuln Oil, and this will allow you to modulate that surface and give you some nice oily weathering across the metals. And so once we've got to that point, then we move into the silver dry brush. So the reason why we're dry brushing some Stormhost silver over this is to bring back some of the shine, because you're going to lose that as you do these shades, and as these washes go down, it's going to dull it down quite a lot. So we use that silver dry brush just on the edges to really buff up the surface and give you that shine back. And now we've got my favorite step. So this is the color glazing. So I've done this a lot on the channel. You'll see it regularly. I enjoy doing this. It's a great early stage learning into color theory and how to glaze and things like that. It's a very non-destructive way to practice this sort of thing, and it gives you a great result. And I really love True Metallics, so here we are. So we've got that magenta shade, the purple shade, and the blue shade with Lamia medium, and you're going to be using that Lamia medium like water to dilute it down to a very thin consistency. So this isn't like a wash like the previous steps. We're going to be manually layering in these colors from magenta through purple, then into blue, in less and less amounts across the model. So you're looking for, seam lines, little areas where you want to fade it out. So fade it out into the flat areas of the metal and get this sort of nice transition from the metal colors through into these colored glazes. And so you're just moving around the model, accessing these different areas with the color glazing to build up this tonality across the metal surface. So from red to purple to blue. And then finally, the most important step is the line highlight with the silver again. So we bring out that Stormhose silver again, or a similar light silver color, and you use a fine detail brush here, and you're going to be lining in the edges with that silver. So hitting all those edges. When you're coming to an edge, you can use the side of the brush as like the side of a knife kind of idea, and it's running along that edge to pick out the raised point to give you the highlight. Or you can use the tip of the brush and run it and draw it down the line in the case of a flat area, that sort of thing. But a lot of this model has a lot of edges, so you can use the side of the brush like that to pick out those highlights. And you really want to do this here to bring back the shine, because these shades are going to dull the surface down. You're not going to get that shiny metallic surface, so you need to bring back this highlight step. It's really important. Take your time with it, and you'll get it right, and it really brings it to life. When you put it under light, you'll see what I mean. It just comes alive, and you get a really bright, shiny result. And now we're up to the black. So here we've got the Necromancer Cloak mixed with black, then Necromancer Cloak, Dungeon Grey, Uniform Grey mixed with a little bit of white, and then some more white, and then, more white again. So that's for the spot highlight at the end. And so we're building up from that dark color all the way up into lighter and lighter tones. Now for the darkest color, that's just for the skirt, for the clothing, just to give you something to break away from the black. But everything from Necromancer Cloak up is for the armor, shield, and the skirt. So you build up through sort of line highlighting style build up, and you're using a fine brush here, and just building up lighter and lighter steps, keeping the highlights quite narrow and fine. And the reason for that is you want to read it as black. The thicker the highlight lines are, the more it'll read as grey. So the thinner the lines are and sharper they are, and the brighter they go, the more you'll get a black read on the surface. So we just move up through those steps and build in those highlights. And then from there, we move into our an optional step of glazing. So I've got that Achillean green contrast with some contrast medium mixed in to a very, very thin consistency, a very transparent consistency. And we just paint it over the surface of the shield and the shoulder pad. And the reason why I'm doing that is to set it apart from the black skirt, just to give a slightly colored version. So that Achillean green is like a blue. And so it just gives a little bit of a difference there. And then finally, some satin varnish from Vallejo over the top, just to give it a lacquered surface. I like that personally, but you don't have to do this, but this is just an additional step just to give a difference from the black skirt. And now we're onto that red cape, and this is a really fun one. I really enjoy doing the red build-up. So we've got that night blue there, and then Mephiston and Trollslayer orange, some deep yellow. And so we're building up a gradient there from the night blue through night blue mixed with Mephiston mixed with orange, and then a sort of off orange color with a little bit of that red mixed in, and then the Trollslayer orange, then that with some yellow, and then like an off yellow with a little bit of a mix in. So we've got like sort of 7 or 8 layers there, and we're building up slowly. So we've got that night blue first, and we base that cape with it just to get away from the black. And so once we've got that down, then we move through that first base layer, which is the blue mixed with the Mephiston. And this is our base red. And so we build that up, feathering the edges, leaving some of the blue to show through. The deeper cracks, you might leave a little bit of that blue, just building in that base tone, modulating the surface to give you some blue and dark red shadows. And then from there, you've got the Mephiston, and that's the main true color of the cape. and so, or local color as you would call it. So we build that up now, leaving the darker layers underneath for the deepest recesses of the cape, and the main flat areas are done with this Mephiston. And then from there we move up through Mephiston mixed with orange, and this is our first sort of main highlight step. So you're moving down a brush, lining those in on the top surfaces, the folds where the light would hit, and then moving up through more of that troll slayer, sort of off troll slayer color, doing less of that highlight line, and then up into troll slayer. Once you hit that real orange, now we're moving into almost a spot highlight. So not hitting the whole line of the highlight, but hitting towards the edges and the ends of the cape. And as we move up through that troll slayer mixed with the yellow and then the off yellow color, that's a real spot highlight. So that means just the very tips, you're just really marking out some really bright hot spots on that cape. If you go too far with this, you'll end up with an orange cape, so you want to keep the red. So just like with the black, we're looking at very tight lines, very tight highlights, not too thick. Otherwise you'll get more of an orange read rather than a red read. With the bones, we have the field drab, the white, and the Ushabti. And so we're building up a gradient once again, going from dark to light. We've got that field drab, then the field drab mixed with Ushabti as our base layer. And then we've got Ushabti and then Ushabti with white, and then more white going up into a spot highlight. So we start with that basic field drab, and we just paint all the bone areas and get a nice base tone down, just like we've done everything else on the model. And so we just build that up, and then we move into that darker Ushabti color, and that becomes our base shadow, or our base layer, really for the bone. The field drab is just to get away from the black, like we've done with the blue in the red. And so then the Ushabti, our main color, you start building that up, and you're feathering it out, trying to create interesting patterns and texture on the bones, as you'll see me do, little shadows here and there where the depressions are, and building the lighter colors to the top surfaces of those bones. And so moving up through the Ushabti mixed with white, we're hitting those top areas, those highlight areas, the ends of the hands, etc., the top of the bones on the shoulder there, anywhere where we see a nice predominant area where we can hit the highlights around the rib cage there, and just moving up until we get those really off-white colors, and that's really where you're hitting those spot highlights. So you're going down a brush into a nice detail brush and just hitting all those little nice spot areas, just to give some real brightness, because with light colors like this, they often dull once they dry. They'll go on really bright and then they'll dull back. So you want to bump it up a little bit brighter than you normally go, so you get the full range for your bone colors. And then finally, once we've got that down, then we move into the really fun step of doing a bit of glazing into those bones to make them look old and gnarly. So we've got that sepia and that biltane shade mixed with the lamia medium, and again, just like we've done before, diluting it down to a very thin glaze and just touching up some little areas around the bones, in between the bone sections, just to give it a little bit of green and brown mixture in there, just to give it that old weathered look. With the leathers and the furs, we're using our browns again. So we've got that Rhinox hide, Doombull, then Bala Brown mixed with Doombull, then Bala Brown, then some Ushabti for the final highlights on the furs, and the leathers will go up to the highlights on the Bala Brown. So slightly different modulation there. And you're just building up through your layers once again, hitting the Rhinox hide for the base layer, moving up through your Doombull for the highlights, using a fine detail brush here, hitting all those edges and creating scratches and marks on the surface of the leathers to give it a little bit of weathering and life. That's always a fun thing to do with things like leathers. And then building up through into that Bala Brown mixed with the Doombull, and then Bala Brown for those. And then finally doing a little bit of Ushabti on the highlights of the furs, just to set them apart from the other browns there. So you've got a little bit of difference between those two. You could also use other browns there, or change the fur color, but here we're just doing that. And then finally, we move into the glyphs or tablets that are there. And for these, we've got our nice dark blue-gray, and then that pale grey-blue color, and we're mixing up through about 3 or 4 steps, blending up into a white mixed in for the spot highlights. And here we're doing the same thing, just hitting the dark grey-blue there, and then moving up through that sort of mid-tone up into the pale grey-blue, and then mix with white for the spot highlights, just to make them feel a little bit different and add a little bit of touch of that blue to echo the other blues that are around the model, which are there. And then finally we're onto the gems. So we've got that dark sea blue, the sick green, and my favorite kraken skin, and we're just building up through some layers here. And with gems, you're looking to highlight the bottom side of the gem. So we're highlighting up through into that kraken skin with fine line highlights to the bottom side of that gem, and leaving the top area quite dark with that dark sea blue, or even black if you wanted to. It's a very small gem, so you probably just have the dark sea blue there. And then once you've got that all sorted out and you've got that nice bright highlight on the bottom side, you then use a spot of white, little dot, just at the top, and that will give you your gem. So the light is hitting the top, it's dark all around with that bright white spot, and then the color actually reflects on the bottom side of the gem. And then finally, as an optional step, I use some gloss varnish just to paint over the top of it, just to give it a little bit of shine and add to the variation on the model. And there we go, one Undying Warrior all done. Let's take a look. Well, this is super cool. Yeah, it's you're going to be hearing this a lot on these videos over the course of the year. I've waited a long time to see these things come to fruition. And yeah, this is a real special one for me, because this has been under a few different editions as a piece, you know, as a sculpt, and to finally see it in this heroic 32mm scale is pretty cool. Yeah, I'm very, very happy, and I hope you've enjoyed going through the video here and seeing him come together, because I certainly enjoyed painting him. It was a lot of fun, and he'll you know, go in his pride of place amongst the others in the warband as these grow and you know, as I make more of them. So that's really cool. But yeah, I'll leave a nice image for him at the end, as I normally do with the paint list and that sort of thing, if you want to have a go at this. But yeah, this is just super cool. And as I said at the beginning, you know, the links in the down there if you want to go check them out. They're obviously available as of this video, as of today. So that's really cool. But otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit that like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one.